Today on Inspired Money.
If you do, and it is a real basic rule, I think. If you do what you love and you really have your heart in it, you just really love doing it. Unless it's like robbing banks or something like that.
You got to be careful what you love. Hopefully you love something legal.
Right. Yeah, right.
This is episode 1 with longtime guitarist for Weird Al Yankovic, Jim Kimo West. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm speaking with guitarist Jim Kimo West. Now, I grew up watching Late Night with David Letterman in the early 90s. I've always had this understanding that the best musicians were those like Paul Schaefer in The World's Most Dangerous Band, because they could perform at the highest level with any guest covering all genres. It's in this same light that I have such high regard for Kimo. He's great at what he does and he plays from the heart. If you don't know him, he's played alongside the king of parody, Weird Al Yankovic, for over 35 years. He can pull off an Eddie Van Halen guitar solo with ease, as heard in Eat It, then followed by a spot-on Green Day guitar tone, as heard in Canadian Idiot. If that weren't enough, he's just as proficient covering the Backstreet Boys, Lady Gaga, and Don McLean. I've even seen him rap in the style of Chameleon Air on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. As a guitarist myself, I'm kind of a sucker for listening to creatives talk about their work, partially because it's so different from my desk job. I also appreciate sitting down with Kimo because of his very unique career path to success. His band is truly like no other. His band has sold more than 12 million albums, recorded more than 150 parody and original songs, and they've performed more than 1,000 live shows around the world. Kimo's also a prolific and respected Hawaiian slack key guitarist. If you've seen the Oscar-winning film The Descendants, you've experienced this great acoustic guitar tradition. He's a 2-time winner of the LA Treasures Award. In this interview, we talk about money, music, taking risks, and what motivates him to be the best musician he can be. Now let's get inspired with Jim Kimo West. Well, Kimo, thank you for being on the show. Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Well, what I do remember when I was a little kid, whenever my grandmother would come to visit, and this would really delight myself and my younger brother, she would collect a lot of change, just loose change, like saving quarters and nickels and dimes, and she would save it all, and she would come and just bring it in a little purse or something and just dump this big pile of coins out in front of us, and we would just go nuts. Oh my God. And we'd count it all out, and of course that was good for learning math. We'd count it all out and divide it, so it was like the most thrilling thing, just all of a sudden, oh my God, look at all that money.
Well, yeah, it was in a tangible form, since it's all like credit cards and electronic these days.
Right, exactly. So it was quite a thrill. I remember our eyes would just light up, and we'd, oh my God, and this big pile of coins to divvy up, and after that, I think my most, next to that, I think it was probably when I actually first started earning money, which was probably as a kid. I think I was mowing lawns for, $3 or something. And I think I might have done a little babysitting too, but, when I was a young teenager, but those were my first actual jobs, of actually making money,
When did you start playing guitar? Is there a story behind that?
Well, yeah, there is more or less. My older brother, I have a brother who's 10 years older than me, and he was a big folky. He wasn't a professional musician, but he loved folk music, and I used to see him play guitar. He had a guitar, and he'd play songs and sing songs, and And he was gone for a while, I remember, and he was in school, and his guitar was in the closet, and I think it had like 2 strings on it, and I think I was about 12 years old, and of course this was, a time when, there was a lot of rock and roll on the radio and everything, and the Beatles and things like that, and I remember picking that guitar up. It had like 2 strings on it, and just really like sort of getting really interested in this guitar. And then when he came home, he saw I was interested in the guitar, so he went out and bought a new set of strings, and he bought me a little book and a capo. I remember there was a capo. He bought a book and a capo and a new set of strings, and and I was just completely just absorbed by music from that point on. It was just like I couldn't get enough. And I immediately went through that book and learned everything in the book, and started even writing my own songs. I was just, that was it. I was just guitar all the time. I was locked in the room playing guitar, and I didn't. I'm self-taught, so I never took any lessons from anybody. But I would, I would listen to records, and of course, any chance I would get to see. This is, of course, well before YouTube and stuff like that. So since I really didn't know any guitar players, anytime there would be somebody on TV, like a great guitar player on TV, I'd just be glued to the TV, just try and see what they were doing, And so that's kind of how I started, and I started off on acoustic, and just once I had that guitar in my hand, it was all over.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's nice that you had a older brother who fostered that interest.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And gave you that capo so that you could play in any key.
That's right. That's right. No, it was really sweet. Yeah, he was, he showed me a few chords, and he got me the book, and I was, I was off to a good start. So.
Now, was that in Florida?
Yes, I grew up in Florida. I was born in Canada, and my family moved to Florida when I was quite young. I was like 9 years old, and I was probably around 12 when I picked the guitar up. A very common story too. A lot of people I know started playing music right around that age.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
By the time I was 16, I actually played starting to play some gigs. Actually, so that the first time I made money playing music was. I think I was 16 years old, and I was playing at this strawberry festival in Plant City, Florida, cool. With this band. And we had this band. I think it was a 3-piece band with 3 singers, and we, basically rehearsed for this one gig and played this show. And it was like a little grandstand of people, and I think I remember I made $40, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can play music, have fun, and make money, too.
After playing Strawberry Festival, you must have been in high school then still. Did you go on to college?
I did for a short time, but I was in the art world. That was my sort of major, was art, and I was really kind of big into art and graphics and, that thing. And so there was a point where I was going to college, studying art, but playing music too, And at a certain point, it's like, this music thing is way more fun. I can see this being a career, yeah. Whereas the art thing was sort of something that had been in me for a long time. But I was starting to look at it less and less as, the career possibilities. It's like, well, I just don't know. What are your choices? Being a famous artist is a kind of a very, would be a very tough thing to count on. And,
right.
And I didn't really want to be a teacher. And, I was like, I don't know. This music thing it just seemed like a no-brainer. I was having fun. I really enjoyed music, and my heart was in it. So it was like, I told my parents, it's just like, I got to follow the music thing. And they were supportive,
I was going to say, what did they say?
Yeah, well, they were initially a little disappointed, but they knew that I really loved music, and they supported me. It was all good, and I've pretty much have done music my entire life. I mean, when I was young, up until my into my early 20s, I did have some day jobs, of course.
In that time, when you were ready to sort of embark down that path of embracing music as a profession, Did you have this sense of confidence and conviction, like I am going all in and this is the path I'm going to take, or was it more I'm going to give this a go and see what happens?
Luckily for me, it was something that I had no qualms about. I completely knew that that's what I was going to do, and I know it's unusual, especially at that young an age. I would say probably by the time I was 18, I was completely convinced that that was going to be my life. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people struggle with, all their lives with finding the right, their right calling. But I was really lucky in that respect, and I really, like I said, from the age 18 on, I was completely convinced that that was what I was going to be doing, and I didn't have to worry about that anymore. I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you think there was a source for that confidence, or was that just something that you had and it was almost like predestined?
Yeah, I can't even put a finger on it. I mean, I don't know. It almost does seem it was predestined. I didn't really come from a family of musicians, I mean, I think my grandmother played a little piano, but, none of them were certainly professional musicians or anything like that. So I didn't really have that in my family background, but I don't know. I was just completely confident about it, and that was, like I say, that was it. There was just no question. That was what I was going to do,
Right. Now, was it at that point in time that you decided to relocate? How did that come about that you ended up on the West Coast?
Oh, yeah. Well, what it was I played in a number of rock bands, and at a certain point I got a chance to play at this big club in Tampa. That's where I was living. It was called Roboconti's. It was a big, I guess it had started off as a disco club, but it was kind of like the Tampa's version of Studio 54, Mm-hmm. It had started off as I think as a disco in the disco era, and then it became just a big club with, and then they had a live band, which was sort of put together by the club owner, but it was, essentially it was the best gig in town.
Yeah.
And it was a house gig, so you didn't have to cart your gear around. You just could just leave it there, And I worked there for almost 2 years, and it was the place where all the musical celebrities would come when they'd had a night off and they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go out to a big club, So, Frank Zappa would come in there, and I met Don Henley and Glenn Fry there, and all kinds of people, rock and roll people would come. It was the big happening place in town.
Sounds like an amazing training ground.
Yeah, and we had and it was a professional system. We had a sound guy and a lighting guy, and it was very professional. And in fact, Frank Zappa told us that we were we were doing mostly covers, mm-hmm. of course, current, real contemporary covers. But he said this is the best cover band I've ever seen. It's quite a compliment from Frank Zappa.
For sure.
So what happened was, I was there for 2 years, and actually Frank Zappa had talked to the bass player and I and took our phone numbers, which mm-hmm. was quite a thrill. And he actually did call the bass player, Steve, and about auditioning, and Steve came out to L.A., relocated to L.A.
So Steve went first.
Yeah, he went out there, and I thought, well, he would go audition for Zappa. He didn't get the gig, but he ended up relocating. And then he ended up meeting some other guys, another band who was looking for a guitarist, and they were a working band. And he called me and said, hey, these if you want to come out here, these guys are looking for a guitar player, and you could probably be working right away. And so I did some back and forth back in those days before the internet. Of course, we were like exchanging cassettes and things like that by the mail. Sounds ridiculous now, but that's how we did it. So I ended up relocating basically because I had work. I could go there, and we had like 3 days of rehearsals, and I was already playing gigs 3 days after I came to Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I had known for a while in my heart that it was, in where I was in Tampa, I had the best gig in town, and I was partners with some friends in a recording studio, and it was kind of like, well, I don't know if we can really take it any farther here, it was just, I kind of like got the best situation I could ever have there. I thought, well, I've got to go to a big city, and it's got to either be New York or L.A. So having a job right away, really really helped, make it clinch the thing, and it was sad to leave, but I quit my steady job where I had a guaranteed paycheck and took a chance, so, but every once in a while you got to take chances, and that's what it was about. And I was still pretty young, so it's like, why not? Got to give it a shot.
Well, you've got to be in a special club of people who moved to LA and started getting paid for what you moved out there for. You were never waiting tables.
Yeah, I know. I was very lucky, I tell you. I did have one day job when I first came to LA, and it was about, I think I probably worked there for maybe 8 months. It was a post-production place, and I was playing at night in, I think this was maybe after this other band. The band that I was originally came out to join, they eventually sort of fell apart. And so I got a day job working at this post-production place in Hollywood. And, just kind of not doing anything real important. But I had a day job for a short time. That was the only day job I ever had in California. And, but then I met, then when I hooked up playing with Weird Al, then there was a tour, and I was like, okay, well, I got to quit my day job. And then I did, and then that was the end of my day job.
That was a really quick segue. Was there any bigger story to that, since it really launched a, I think it launched a career for you?
Yeah, well, but Steve, who's on to this day, Steve J, the bass player for Weird Al, he's, my longtime friend, and he had met Al first. He had, I think, got called to do to play bass on Al's very first record, the first record from his record deal. And Al was looking to play some gigs and needed a guitar player, and I got recommended for it. I think I actually auditioned. I think he was auditioned a few different people, but at that time I was playing with a number of different bands. I was playing in a punk band. I was playing in various whatever I could do.
Right.
And so it was like, what? Some guy with an accordion? It's like, and it's like, well, he's got gigs, and they're paying gigs. I was like, sure, I'll play, whatever.
I want to know what you were thinking. What were you thinking when you went to go audition for a guy playing accordion?
Yeah, well, and I met him, and he was like obviously a really nice guy, and then so I had to learn a bunch of songs, and as I'm learning the songs, I listened to the lyrics, and it's like these are very well crafted and very I immediately gained a lot of respect for him. So anyway, what originally was just a few gigs turned into, of course, a much bigger thing, because Al's this whole thing was happening at the beginning of MTV era, and Al started providing doing videos which got played on MTV a lot, and and then one thing led to another, and he had a pretty much a hit record there and early on, and the tours started getting bigger. And
so did that all happen pretty quickly?
Yeah, it did. It happened within just a couple years of meeting him. When I met him, he was finishing up his very first album for Scotti Brothers, and that was one just called Weird Al Yankovic, and it was I think the big song was he had a couple. I Love Rocky Road, and then he had one called Ricky, which was basically a cover, a parody of Oh Mickey, which was a Tony Basil, Oh Mickey, you're so fun.
Yeah.
And so Al did a Ricky and Lucy thing, and that was the first video that played on MTV, and got played quite a bit on MTV, and it was a low budget black and white video, but it was very well done, and and then so I wasn't really involved on that record per se, but the next record was the one that he did a Michael Jackson parody of Beat It. He did Eat It back in the, and that record went to a whole other level of success and became very, very popular. And and then the tours got bigger, and we were getting limo rides, and got treated. We were getting treated better, and it just sort of snowballed. A very slow, I wouldn't say snowball, but it's over the years. That his career has gradually, slowly gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and amazingly enough, it's been so many years. But
it's totally amazing.
Yeah, it's not really your typical arc of a successful band where they usually have this big spurt where they just blow up and then all of a sudden the slow fade out. With Al, it's like this slow uphill ticking, slow uphill rise over the years.
Well, I think that, yeah, definitely. And you are in an elite group of bands that have been together for 35 plus years. And
I know, it's crazy. I mean, there's not many of us.
And when you talk about arc, it's like your group has stayed on top of pop culture and you guys have changed with the times, while many of the artists that you parodied have lost the spotlight.
Yeah. Well, I think the beauty of what Al does, I mean, not that he ever planned it this way, but he's always commenting on what's, on current music and current, pop culture. And so, that never goes out of style. That's always a completely regenerating thing. It's always fresh, because he's always commenting on what's popular. So what he does is always fresh. And the other thing, which is an interesting thing demographically, is because he's always commenting on what's current, he's always regenerating his audience. His audience, when we play shows, the demographic is like no other show. You've got grandparents out there. You've got 4-year-old kids, that are jumping up and down.
I think I've been to 4 of your shows, and
yeah, and you've seen it. Yeah,
I think Al describes it best. I read somewhere where he called your live performances a rock and comedy multimedia extravaganza, and that the audience ranges from toddlers to geriatrics.
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it is, and there really is sort of something for everybody in the show. It's a show you can take your kids to because, I mean, there's some edgy humor, but there's not anything that's going to really embarrass a parent,
It is a real experience. You guys sold out Radio City Music Hall, and my 9-year-old and now 7-year-old, they are now counted among the Weird Al Yankovic and band huge fans. So we'll be back. I mean, the funny thing is when I tell people that I'm going to a Weird Al show, it's either like I get 2 reactions. One is Weird Al is a genius, or they say, Weird Al's still around? I didn't know that Weird Al's still around. So it's kind of funny because you guys are like, you guys have been together for so long. I feel like I admire you because you're doing your thing. I go to your shows and the audience is decked out in costume. People are singing along like word for word lyrics. I mean, it really is an experience. And for those who have not followed Weird Al's career, your accomplishments are huge. I got this online, so I don't know if it's up to date or accurate, but I'll run it by you. 11 Grammy nominations, 4 Grammy Awards, 4 gold records, 6 platinum records in the United States. You had a top 10 Billboard album with Straight Out of Linwood. White and Nerdy was a #1 single. And the latest album, Mandatory Fun, was a #1 album during its debut week. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, you guys have an amazing record. Like, when you look back, I mean, the success is there. When you look back, like, how much of that is due to goal setting and planning versus adjusting and sort of letting things happen organically?
Well, I really have to defer. I mean, it's really, Al is really the guy who is the brains behind it all. And, and we're as a band, we support him, but he's the one that's really running the show. And he's, not only creatively the leader, but he also comes up with a lot of the marketing ideas for this last record. It was his idea he had lots of help and, he has a manager and he has a lot of people working on it. But the idea for marketing for this last record, Mandatory Fun, was that he wanted to create videos, of course, and the record company, Sony, was, nowadays it's not like the old days where they were making a lot of money, and so they're not going to shell out a few $100,000 per video to make videos, you know. So basically they said, well, you're on your own. If you want to make videos, you know, you got to pay for them. But so what Al did was, it was very brilliant. He partnered with various different websites like the Nerdist Channel and College Humor and, you know, Wall Street's entertainment page and various entertainment websites. Mm-hmm. He would partner with them so that if they funded the production of the video, then and some of them were not that expensive. You know, some of them were quite inexpensive to do. If they funded the video, then the video would be exclusively on their site for the first, you know, couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, so he was able to get 8 videos funded by 8 different websites. Mm-hmm. And when it was all said and done, then he released the videos one day at a time, 8 videos in 8 days. So the first video comes out, then everybody's like, next morning, what's the next one going to be? You know, and people are started anticipating it. What's the next one going to be? You know, so they would be released in the morning.
I was there. I loved it.
He'd blast it out on his Twitter. He's got a lot, you know, millions of Twitter followers, and he'd blast it out and, you know, and show everybody where it was, where the link was. And of course, web providers who finance the videos, of course, then they have their own publicity. So they're pumping it out to all their fans. And so it was just then it was a massive snowball. So by the end of the 8 days, it was just crazy. You know, he was all of a sudden he was on every national news channel, and I think it was like 6,000 articles written about it.
Yeah, I was going to say it was totally brilliant, and I'm sure case studies for business schools studying marketing, right, in the 21st century. Absolutely. It was really a brilliant thing, and it was mostly him and his manager. But you know, I mean, he's really the brains behind it. And and as a band, we support what we can. You know, I mean, obviously, we're mostly there for the musical part of it and that part. But yeah, it was quite an amazing marketing campaign. And now, you and I spoke once about trends in the industry, because the internet in many ways has not been kind to the music industry. For the past 16 years, revenues have declined, I think, 4% a year. And that rate of decline, this is talking about album sales, CD sales.
Sure, yeah.
But I saw a figure, Mary Meeker at Kleiner Perkins. She does an internet trends study every year. And just a couple of weeks ago, she had a report. It's like 335 slides with a lot of information. But one of her headlines there was that last year, the overall music revenue grew by 11%. And that's the highest figure since 2009. So
yep.
I just wanted to ask you, what's going on and what do you see?
What I see with my own career and my Hawaiian slack key stuff, my music has been out there in, through when it was just CDs, and then it's been out there since the beginning of streaming and all that. So I've watched the trends, and so basically what's happening is that CDs, of course, are declining in sales. It makes sense because it's very easy to stream stuff or have MP3s. It's who needs to have things sitting on your shelf taking up space? It's very easy to it's easy to buy. You don't have to go to a store. It's very easy it's instant gratification. So I mean, it makes sense from a consumer point of view that the new technology, especially streaming, if you can pay a little bit per month and basically hear anything you want to hear anytime, I mean, that's pretty hard to beat.
Now, I hear you speaking from a consumer's perspective, but how about from the artist's perspective? I've seen you post on social media about your streaming checks that you've received. So how does it make you feel?
The technology moves so fast that there was an initial shock of the CD going out of popularity, even MP3s downloads going, they're sinking too. Downloads are sinking because streaming is much more popular. So there was a shock wave basically of change, and it's taken the music industry a while to adapt and figure out how to monetize the new technology, which is streaming, either Pandora style, which is like a radio, or on demand like Spotify.
Yeah.
So there was this, I think what we saw in the last number of years is this shock, a shock wave where everything was topsy-turvy, and that's why the revenues were just in steep decline. And, of course, CD revenues are always going to be in steep decline. They're not going to be coming back anytime soon. They're going to keep going down. We just have to embrace the new technology. But as we do, there also are opportunities that have opened up. Typically, streaming revenue is very low, but now if you're lucky enough to, it's very minute per stream. It's like 0.007 cents per stream or something. It's very minute. Now, that being said, if you happen to, what I'm starting to see now, I think as of maybe since a couple years ago or so, I've had some of my stuff on some very big playlists. Now, playlists are sort of curated programs where people, pick there's a certain mood, and people will tune in to sort of, let's say a relaxing mood or an acoustic music vibe, or any kind of musical mood or vibe. There's playlists for. So if you happen to get your music in enough playlists that are very popular worldwide, then you actually can make some money. And I've seen a steady rise in the last 2 years, pretty marked rise actually now, because I think all of my music is on a number of very popular playlists. And I guess that's probably because I've had my music out there in the streaming platform since the beginning.
Do you have to actively pursue getting your music on those playlists, or does it happen more passively because people find your music?
Yeah, mine has all been passive. I use CD Baby as my distributor, so they basically put it out there to all the streaming networks, including iTunes and downloads and everything like that. So I never really did anything. It was passive. But I have heard, I've been reading articles about how you can supposedly find the people who are curating the playlists and talk to them and shoot them emails and things like that. I haven't done any of that. I'm sure, a lot of people are probably trying now, so.
You and I met because of a common passion for Hawaiian slack key guitar. You've recorded a lot of albums. I think you've recorded 11 slack key albums.
Probably. Counting, counting the ones that I've done as commissions, I haven't even counted.
That's got to be a true passion for you, right? Because even though you say you're making some streaming money, but your Hawaiian slack key doesn't pay as well as your quote-unquote day job.
Right. But, it is getting better and better. And, we do, you count, because you count in your live performances. And, in live performances, people still like to buy CDs because they're just they're a tangible thing and a souvenir. And so, we still do pretty well. I still do pretty well with CDs sales at shows, and that's a pretty good, that's pretty good income too. So, but what I was going to say was that my first record was called Coconut Hat. And I didn't get into, slack key was just something I loved when I first heard it. I went to Hawaii first in 1985 to Hana, Maui, and I heard slack key records, Gabby Pahinui and all these great records, and I just really loved the sound, and I just thought, geez, it sounds like the place, the place and the music just go together so beautifully. And I, for many years, I just like to listen to slack key, and I'd have it in my car on a cassette or whatever, and then it just gradually crept into my, all of a sudden I started writing some slack key tunes. I didn't really study. I didn't sit down and go, well, I'm going to learn all these riffs and I'm going to learn, any songs or anything. I just started kind of writing my own slack key songs. And I wrote this one. It was actually a piece dedicated to a good friend of mine who, we used to be roommates back in Florida. He was a chef who passed away. It was really kind of unfortunate. He was a young guy, but I was kind of very emotionally, just a wreck. And I just, sat down and played my guitar to kind of comfort myself. And all of a sudden I came up with this slack key song, and I called it A Lay for James. His name was James. I remember playing it for a few people, and they were like, wow, that's really good. You should do some more of those. I have a couple of friends in Hawaii, Hawaiian people, and they were like, that's really nice. And so I got inspired to start writing more slack key songs, and every time I'd write one, I would record it, just mostly so I wouldn't forget it. And it was strictly, just for the love of doing it. I had no thought about making money with it. It was just something I just liked to do. And at some point, somebody said, John, you've got 12 or 13 songs. You should put out a CD. And I hadn't even considered it. It hadn't even crossed my mind. It was like, really? And my friend, who's one of my friends who suggested that, was a graphic artist. He said, "Well, yeah, man, I'll do the packaging, I'll do the cover, and and you can get these things all put together, and you can have a CD." And I was like, "Wow, a CD!" I couldn't, it just blew my mind. And I'll never forget the day he came over with the prototype package and showed me the thing in my hand. I had it in my hand, the prototype, not the manufactured product, but it was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to have my own CD. And so as soon as I had it manufactured, and it was really just for the love. I really wasn't looking to make. Had the money. Making money with slack key was not something I hadn't even considered. I hadn't even never played a slack key gig. Just played for myself. And that's how slack key always was. It was never performed. And it was something people played around the house for the family, and
backyard music.
And that's what I had been. Yeah, and that's what I had been doing. I hadn't been out performing it or trying to make money with it. And so anyway, I had a CD, and I got somebody in Hawaii who was a publicist to help me do some, a couple of little record release parties. And, I got to meet all the people and got invited to the Slack Key Festival, and I met a bunch of Slack Key players, and all of a sudden I was sort of in that world,
Yeah, it's funny because you sort of it's almost like you have this dual life where back in the day, it's like you were taking the limo and you were on an MTV, and then you've been touring all these years with Weird Al, and then you also have Hawaiian Slack Key, where I'm sure you drive yourself to the gig and you carry your carry your Hendrickson amp in and play like a small club. Tell me about some of the dates that you're doing right now with Ken Emerson in the Slackers in Paradise.
Yeah, well, Ken Emerson's I met Ken years ago, but he's been in Hawaiian music for years. I grew up on Oahu, and he used to play with Mo Keali, and as you know, he is an expert at the old Hawaiian steel guitar playing, the acoustic steel guitar playing from way back, and he, which nobody, even in the 70s, it had already been kind of lost, and so a lot of the old timers like Gabby and people like that love to have Ken play because he was bringing back this old sound. It hadn't been around since their fathers or grandfathers around. So he, he's kind of a legend in many ways, and in fact, there's really nobody else that does that like he does. So anyway, we had met years ago, and a few years ago we ended up. By this point he had moved back to the mainland. He lives up near Napa Valley, and we decided to start playing some shows together, and we made this record, Slackers in Paradise. So we're out, essentially came out last year, and we figured we would play, last fall, and then into this year, and maybe a little bit into next year, because I'm not touring with Al this year. So we're, it's a good chance to promote the record. So we're doing shows. We started off in Hawaii. We played George Kahumoko's Masters of Slack Key show 2 weeks in a row. It was funny. I had, the way we've been doing it lately there is, and it just happened by chance the first time, but I had a show on, I think it was May 17th. Wednesday, their shows are every Wednesday. So the way we worked it was I had a show on May 17th, and Ken was my special guest. And then Ken had a show a week later on May 24th, and I was his special guest.
Very tricky, Kimo. Very tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, so that because we were not sure how to bill it, but that's how we did it, and we and we used that, as an opportunity to promote our record and play songs from the record, and we ended up staying there at the beautiful Napili Kai Resort where the show is. We ended up staying there the whole week, and we were looking, thinking, hey, we like this work schedule, like this 1 day on and 6 days off. Like Ken's like, Kimo, I think we need to refine this work ethic here. This is good. 1 day on and 6 days off.
Well, from what I've heard, what you guys are doing as a duo is really magical, because the slack key guitar and then the Hawaiian steel complement each other so beautifully. And then like the musicality of what you guys are doing, it's really beautiful music. Well,
and we have a lot of fun, because we're the first. We try and keep some spontaneity in the show too. So we're almost always, one of us will pull something out we've never played before. And, and that adds a little bit of an excitement and a different edge as opposed to something that's, we keep a lot of the arrangements, a lot of them, we have a lot of open stuff in there where they can change from night to night. We have stuff that's very together and worked out, and then we have stuff that's very free and open. And I think it goes back to our very first gig. I remember Ken and I had never played together, and Mitch Chang, who does the Southern California Slack Key Festival.
Yeah, sure, I know Mitch.
I had mentioned to Mitch that Ken Emerson's living here on the mainland now. You should really get him down here to be part of the festival one year, because he's great, and he's played with everybody, Mo Cali and Gabby and all these legends. And so he said, well, why don't you two guys do a set? And I said, well, we've never played together. And so I called Ken up, and he said, yeah, let's do it, let's try it. And so I thought, well, we need to book a show before the festival, just so we can have at least have one show under our belt. Yeah,
have one paid rehearsal.
Yeah, so I booked a show in Santa Barbara, nice place called Soho. And so I said, well, sound check is at 6:30, and so we both get there at 6:30, and we just sort of talk about what we could do, and didn't even play anything. We're just like, well, we could do this song. What key do you do that in? And just sort of talked about it. And meanwhile, people are filing in, and eventually there's 75 people in there waiting to be entertained, and we've never played a note put together before. But you know what? It ended up being great. We had the greatest time, and there was a lot of great spontaneous energy, because we were just flying by the seat of our pants, But after the end of the night, everybody was like, people loved it. We had a big Hana encore. And also with the Hawaiian repertoire, there's a lot of songs that people know. It's like, oh yeah, I know that song. What key do you do it in? And you sort of already know a lot of the songs. And so anyway, by the end of the night, it was like, well, Kimo, I guess we got it. We're okay. And sure enough, we played the festival. Everything was great. We had a great time, and it was all it all worked out fine. And it's from that point on, we've always tried to keep some of that spontaneity in the show.
Yeah, in the videos that I've seen, I can see that you guys are having fun and playing off of each other. That energy is there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We just it's a crack up. We do some crazy stuff sometimes. Oh my God.
Kimo, you've had some crazy musical adventures. What do you think the future holds, or what future goals do you have for music and career?
Well, I do love playing with Weird Al. I mean, it's a musically challenging gig in a lot of ways. It's fun. You get to play all these different styles. So, I don't know how much longer Al is going to want to keep touring, but as long as I'm able to, I like doing that, and it's, financially it's a good thing. Obviously, when I'm touring, I'm got a steady paycheck, and that's nice. So we will be touring next year, and, so I look forward to that. But then I also look forward to the times when we're not touring too, because it gives me a chance to do my Slack Key shows. Yeah. And with Slack Key, like getting back to the fact that we just do it really for love. I mean, even if it came down to the point where I wasn't playing many Slack Key gigs, or it wouldn't bother me, because I just love playing, and I would just be sitting around on my couch playing anyway if I wasn't out playing shows. I do it for the enjoyment, so, and I always mention that to people. Like, people ask me about, musicians ask me about advice about, getting into the music business, and my advice is always like, with music and just like with any art, it's like, you don't get into it for the business. You get into it for the love, and then if you make money, then it's icing on the cake. You don't, unless you're doing like engineering or production or something where it's a tangible craft that, the service type of thing. But with music, or if you're creating and playing, it's like, you do it for the love of doing it. You do it because you love it. And then if making money becomes part of it, then that's just an extra bonus, really, so.
Well, I think you've hit the lesson for today, right? Mm-hmm. Inspired money. You're saying that it's not really the money that you're chasing. It's you're just doing what you love, and then the money's a byproduct.
Will follow, exactly. Yeah, if you do, and it is a real basic rule, I think. If you do what you love and you really have your heart in it, and you just really love doing it, Yeah, unless it's like robbing banks or something like that.
You got to be careful what you love. Hopefully you love something legal.
Right. Yeah, right.
Well, thank you, Kimo. I want to thank you for your friendship and spending time with me today. And
well, thank you, Andy. It was an honor to be invited, and it's always fun to chat. No matter what if it's sitting on the tour bus or if it's backstage or over the phone, it's always fun.
I forgot to ask where people can find you.
Well, my website is www.jimkimowest.com, JIMKIMOWEST, and that's generally the easiest place to find me. Of course, but I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, and look for Jim Kimo West. I'm out there in the social media.
Right on. Right on. All right, Kimo. Lots of aloha. Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Mahalo,
Mahalo nui.
Yeah. Okay, aloha.
Thanks for listening. What were your favorite inspired money moments? I'm impressed that Kimo knew with such conviction what he wanted to do at just 18 years old. He took a chance, leaving his steady nightclub job. He felt that he had done all he could there and yearned for something bigger. And then he found it, with longtime friend Steve J. partnering with Weird Al Yankovic. 35 years later, it's amazing how their success is not the typical arc of the successful band. They just keep gradually moving up. Finally, said like a true artist, you've got to do what you love, and then the money will follow. If that's not inspired money, I don't know what is. If you have a chance to check out Kimo's slack key guitar or catch him on tour with Weird Al, you're in store for a great show. Weird Al's shows are funny, energetic, and really musical. Not to mention the show features videos, costumes, and a true all-ages crowd. Coming up next on Inspired Money.
I mean, like every day, it's like I could tell you, these amazing things happen on Don't's Day, right? We provide clean water for people. Like while I'm recording this podcast with you, I'm watching donations come in for this water project that we have on our site. Mm-hmm. And we have stuff like this all the time.
That's 27-year-old Gret Glyer, founder of DonorSee, an app that you can download and help the poorest people in the world. Not only that, but you'll get videos so you can see the impact of how your donation is making someone's life better. Thanks for tuning in. If you like today's show, the best thing you can do is subscribe, rate, and review us. Go to inspiredmoney.fm right now, where there's a link for you to leave an iTunes review. You'll also find show notes and guest links. Inspired Money is brought to you by my company, Runnymede Capital Management, a fiduciary investment advisor to businesses, individuals, and families. Educate yourself for free by subscribing to our blog at blog.runnymede.com. That's RUNNYMEDE. All the music on today's show is by Jim Kimo West. Aloha, Kimo. Want to be an inspired moneymaker? Do something that scares you. Do something that's going to make you better. Do something to give back in a bigger way to the world. Tweet me what you're up to. Until next time, find your inspiration and run with it.